Hi and welcome back to the Cobot channel. This week we're joined by Professor Miles Elsden from the ICE Centre in York. Hi Miles.
Hi, nice to meet you.
Can you tell us a little bit about your role, Miles, and what the ICE Centre does?
Okay, so I'm the director at the Institute for Safe Autonomy at the University of York. I'm the inaugural director. It's a new institute. We haven't officially opened yet, but we're due to do that in February, hopefully. So we bring together some of the existing expertise that the university's had, particularly around the safety of autonomous systems, into a building that's a mixture of laboratory and an office space. We have about 100 researchers in there, covering areas from advanced communications to design and verification of autonomous systems to assuring those systems, and also looking at the social and ethical and trust issues associated with the use of autonomous systems.
Fantastic.
So cutting across multiple sectors, really looking to work to link the university out to the outside world, into industry and policy and beyond.
And it's a new centre. We've never had anything like this before.
Physically, it's a new centre. We're built up, as I said, of existing capabilities within the university, with the idea being to kind of co-locate them all and make the sum bigger than the parts.
And what role can ISA help in companies adopt flexible automation?
So as I said, we're really focused on looking out. So my background's not as an academic, particularly. I've had a mixed career, and the university brought me in specifically to look out and understand how we can transition the research that we do in the university out into the real world, and industry is a key part of that. So we're really here to break down some of those barriers and help break down some of those barriers, both in perception, but also in regulation and other things. So one of the key barriers to autonomy and AI and all the related technologies getting out in the real world is proving that it's safe. And that's what we're here to help people like yourselves do. So we have 30 plus years of experience in safety cases for complex systems. And obviously, as you bring a lot of these new technologies into systems, then they become even more difficult to assure. So how can we provide that fundamental research and knowledge that enables the regulators and the users to assure themselves that the things that they want to do with autonomy, robotics, and AI are safe?
So it's trying to ease the pathway, if you like.
Really about easing the pathway. And it's also about encouraging and supporting new companies, innovation, and startups, really, and making Yorkshire a focus for that. So we're really keen to try and get some of our academics, but also other small companies that we work with, to grow in this space and hopefully to base themselves in Yorkshire and use the great kind of expertise and knowledge base and society that we have in the region in the technical areas with Leeds, Sheffield, York, three Russell Group universities all really close together with a huge amount of complementary expertise.
Yes.
We're obviously focusing on the York side, but working very closely with the others as well.
Excellent. Are there any specific industries that you've been asked to research that perhaps never used automation before, but are looking at robotics and automation now?
I wouldn't say never. I mean, what we're trying to do is be cross-disciplinary, but also cross-sectoral.
Yeah.
So we're really interested in safe autonomy. So it's includes in the name. So it's those safety critical industries.
Yeah.
So we've got a lot of interest from places like rail, which I don't know whether you would say they've done automation before. They're really quite difficult to get innovation into that ecosystem. We're very keen on energy and new energy sources. We have a solar farm at the Institute that is set up to be a living lab so that we can use robotics and autonomous systems to inspect and maintain new energy systems like that. And a lot of it is really about, as I said before, working with the regulators. The technology is often not the challenge, it's the other stuff.
Yeah.
It's the regulation, the legislation, the business model. How do we make that work? So we're talking to people from lots and lots of industries, some a bit further down the line than others. And one of the other key things we're trying to do is to help accelerate that learning across sector. So if a sector is further along in its journey to automation, like logistics and packing, how do we take that knowledge and that expertise and apply it into something like agriculture or energy or transport?
I mean, agriculture is an interesting
Yeah.
sector because it's typically not very well automated, is it,
Yes.
for harvesting and so on processing? But is that something that you've seen people show more interest in, obviously?
Oh, definitely. I was a judge in a robotics award competition earlier on this year, and a couple of the people that we saw were doing exactly that: robotic arms for picking soft fruit and other things off production lines. Talking to an Indian company who want to use an autonomous system to look at crops growing in greenhouses and reduce the human intervention that's needed to manage tomatoes and similar kind of crops in greenhouses. So I think there's a real drive. But again, safety is absolutely key there. When you go out into the agricultural sector, there's lots of bits of metal flying around at high speeds,
Yes.
close to people.
Yes.
It's a real safety-driven industry, and we need to make sure that we can assure people and prove to people that the robots that they're going to use are going to be safe. But it is a really complicated one as well.
I can imagine because it's in an open environment rather than being in a factory environment, which you've got some control over.
Exactly. I mean, it is an open environment. It's not as open as the open roads for autonomous
Yes.
cars, which adds another level of complexity. But yes, you're outside in the weather and with a whole range of other factors that you need to be able to manage. So it's not as straightforward as a nice, well-designed, well-structured factory setting.
Yes. One of the things that we sort of asked about is safety, and you touched on that with the research that you've done. Do you think we were sort of more conservative in the UK with relationship to safety for manufacturing, for instance?
Possibly. I think there's always an interesting balance. I think historically the UK has not been in a bad place. I think we're kind of in between the move quickly and break things kind of stuff of the US and the let's regulate first before we deploy that we see to some extent in Europe.
Yeah.
And we have historically had a nice balance in between the two. I think there are other barriers to roll out, and I think safety in a factory setting is obviously key. I think we're doing quite well in the logistics sector, but there are other areas where we're probably a little bit behind the curve. But I don't think safety is really the barrier here, not for those kind of applications. Other applications, as I say, in transport or other more safety-driven industries, then it becomes more of a challenge.
Yeah. And obviously, we make cobots, and that sort of provides a lot of flexibility to manufacturers. Do you think sort of smaller companies are starting to look at automation and robotics that would have never considered that in the past? Because traditionally, we think of automation being used in the large car plants or the huge packaging plants. But what's your views on that?
I think so. I mean, but I mean, we've spoken about this previously. I think it's that perception of what a robot is. A lot of people look at a robot and they see these big car plants behind fenced off areas, so it's kind of big safety shut-off features moving around at speed, and I don't want to be anywhere near that. Exactly right. We've got a much smaller environment that we're trying to do things in. We have some of your cobots. We have some of your competitors' cobots. We're technology agnostic.
Yep.
But when people come and you talk to them about, well, this is designed to be used next to somebody in an operating environment, they kind of get it. But I don't think people have got the exposure and the understanding of what the possible is at that sector yet. And I think that's kind of one of the things that we're both keen on trying to explore.
It's the challenge, isn't it, that we've got to try and raise the people's understanding of that and how they can follow that pathway without having pitfalls, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's also about, well, what are the barriers to us doing it? You know, these robot arms aren't cheap. They're not massively expensive. They're a lot cheaper than they used to be, but it's still quite a big capital investment.
Yes.
So that's a barrier, and unless you can understand what the benefit and the cost benefit and the return on investment and all that kind of business type stuff is for that technology, it's a challenge. But there's also, I think, a bigger challenge is, well, what could I use this for? And not understanding the breadth of capability of these things and how easy it is to program and get these things working now. You don't need a PhD in computer science to program it to do what you need it to do. So I think there's a lot of perceived barriers that aren't real. There are some real ones, and it's about working with the community to break down those barriers and get better adoption of this kind of tech.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that we're seeing is that by a robot and a person working together and blending those tasks together, you can actually increase productivity. And that's interesting, isn't it, for the future, how a workspace is going to change where a person and a robot could work together. What's your views on that? Are you...
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I mean, I think, and you see the same with AI. I mean, it's top of the news, top of the hype cycle at the moment. That's probably another conversation. But I think the real value is technology can do some things much better than humans, and it can do other things less well.
Yeah.
And you need to combine those two together, and I think you'll get a much stronger system if you have humans, machines, and AI and robotics all better integrated. But working out what that looks like is a challenge, and it'll differ depending on what your application space is. But yeah, I agree. I mean, they're not going to replace people in a manufacturing environment, but they will augment each other and build into new skill sets.
Yeah. One of the things that we've seen, and it kind of ties in with the research that you've done, is there's a rise in the mounting of like a 6-axis arm on the back of a guided vehicle, and it can go off and take kits of parts to production lines or 10 process in a laboratory. Do you think that's going to increase? And is that some of the research that ICE is involved in sort of looking at the safety of those systems as they roam autonomously about buildings?
Very much so. So, I mean, the building itself is designed as a living lab. So, all the doors are powered and connected to the building management system. We're building a digital twin of the building, so robots can navigate around the building, ask the building to open a door, and move through it. Technically, relatively straightforward to do, but how do you then interact with the people who need to cohabit that space with you? I think that's where a lot of the really interesting research lies.
It is. It's an interesting sort of field, that, and that's why I wanted to touch on it, because I know that that's some of the research that you've been doing.
Yep.
So it's
cool.
So
we'll go for the last question.
Yeah, well, I think we can say that that's finished. Now, we touched on this about AI. AI is a huge umbrella to cover lots of different things. How do you think that AI working with robots in manufacturing can help? Is that something that you're also looking at as well in the way that AI is being deployed onto factory floors?
Very much so. I mean, I personally, I mean, AI, as you say, is a huge umbrella term, but in a lot of ways, it becomes a subsystem of an autonomous system.
Yeah.
And another part of that is a robot. And I know I was reading an article yesterday looking at how you might use large learning models and apply them to robotics. It's an interesting concept.
Yep.
But I think, yeah, it will become part of the system. And I think that's one of the challenges we face is around these systems are black boxes. You don't understand how they get to the answers that they get to.
Yes.
Therefore, how do you prove that they're going to do what they say they're going to do?
What the outcome's going to be, exactly.
What the outcome's going to be, and is it going to be safe within your operating environment, within your envelope of safety that you need in a system where you've got bits of metal running around and you've got, there's potential harm to humans in the vicinity. So I think AI is going to be part of it. It's going to, I mean, you see it already with the machine vision stuff that you guys are doing. I mean, there's a lot of the ability for an AI system to look at an image or a 3D image and pick out various things and then act on that information.
Yes.
Massively more so now than it was just a few years ago. So it's that ability to analyze and then act, and the robots are going to be doing a lot of the acting. So I think AI and robotics, they are often kind of intertwined a bit too much sometimes in people's minds, but they are kind of two parts of the same bigger system.
Yes. I mean, like you say, a few years ago, the way that machine vision's evolved, you wouldn't have considered AI as much as it is today. And it might be in 5 years' time, AI and robotics is seen more and more of a tool that we can, for like reinforced learning, to make more efficient picks and to operate more. Better.
Exactly. I mean, these arms are working in complex environments that change. And that's one of the strengths of AI is it has that ability to recognize patterns and even recognize patterns that are not necessarily that common, and then understand how to change things and act in the real world to address whatever the task that it's got in front of it is. So it's really that kind of real world end effector stuff. So people talk about digital twins. They often talk about it as just a virtual model of a building or whatever it might be. But really, it's about being able to take information, analyze that information, and then act in the real world. And robots are often going to be the vector that you use to act in the real world.
Yeah, the physical sort of manifestation of that task. Yeah.
Exactly.
Do you think that using robots can sort of kickstart a new sector in our economy as well? That's quite interesting because we don't have many UK-based robotics companies, but I mean, is that something that you're also involved in the research of looking to try and help these startups to get to the next level, I guess?
Very much so, yeah. And there's always an interesting question as to what you buy and what you make. But even if you buy most of your stuff commercial off the shelf, there's still then some value add that you bring, and then you provide that service or equipment to an end supplier. So I think there's a whole range of supply chains that I think the UK needs to get its head around. I know colleagues up at the National Robotarium are very much thinking along those lines. And are we a maker or a taker of this kind of technology? And I think in some sectors we'll be a taker, and in some sectors we need to be a maker. And I think trying to work out where the UK needs to position itself, I think is a really interesting one. I've worked in government in the past, and a lot of the time it was about there's a big jigsaw. Which of the bits of that jigsaw does the UK want to play in?
Yes.
We can't do the whole thing. We're not a big enough player, but there are certain bits of it where we have a real deep niche capability that we need to extend and build on. And if we can provide that piece better than anybody else, then we've become a big part of the wider ecosystem.
It's interesting because I see it as an opportunity for the UK.
Very much so, yeah.
Rather than being limited to not having as many robots as potentially other European countries, that just means that we've got much more potential to increase our productivity and create a new sector for the economy that's actually going to create jobs and protect us for the future.
We're really good systems people.
Mm.
I mean, I've mentioned systems far too many times already in this conversation, but I think we're really good at saying, right, this is what we need to do, and these are how all the things come together to be able to deliver that.
Yeah.
Some of those we might make, some of them we might buy, some of them we might partner with others for.
Yeah.
But that integration piece is something that we're really, really
consolidate it all together. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And these are always going to be complicated, complex systems. You're going to need somebody who's able to do that integration piece. So I think it's definitely an area we have a strength in.
I think so. One of the things I wanted to talk about, and a theme I wanted to explore, is we talk about the 3D jobs, the dirty, dangerous, and dull.
Mm-hmm.
And in Denmark, they've done some research with the trade unions, and they say that if a job can be automated to protect a human, i.e., you're taking away somebody from grinding or horrible sort of screwdrivering task, it should be automated, and they're quite happy with that. Do you think that that's something that we could move towards in the UK? As opposed to the age-old adage is that robots are going to take people's jobs. We say they don't take jobs, they take tasks, but we want to take over the horrible tasks that we don't want humans to do. And I think that the younger generation of people that are coming into manufacturing, we don't really want them to do those horrible jobs for 30 years. We want to protect them. Welfare is important. What's your views on that?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a strong argument there. I mean, I think we work very much with safety critical industries, and I think there's a lot of industries out there where people still get hurt despite all the safeguards that are put in place around that. Some of these tasks are intrinsically difficult and dangerous, as you say. So the further we can remove humans from those dangerous tasks, dirty tasks. What was the other one?
Dirty, dangerous, and dull.
Dull. Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think there is a lot of that. As I say, we're working with the rail industry. People working next to a live rail, with trains going up and down, it's going to be dangerous no matter what you do. So if you can replace those people with automated systems that can do the inspection or maintenance, whatever they're doing, okay, they might get damaged or whatever, but that's a very different thing from a human getting injured because they're in a such a dangerous environment. Yeah. So I agree. I think those are definitely the areas of focus, and I think yes, it will take away some jobs, but it will create other ones. And I think there's, whenever a new technology comes along, there's always this kind of economic transition. Some jobs are created, other jobs are no longer needed. When I used to work in transport, we were talking about autonomous cars right back in the early days of it, and it was like, well, what's that going to mean? What jobs are that going to take away? And I asked my guys to look at what happened when we went from horse and cart to the internal combustion engine. There's a huge infrastructure of jobs that supported that horse and cart driven economy. None of them exist anymore. But there's, people just had a transition into a new way of working. And I think it won't be to the same scale, but there's a similar kind of transition, I think, as AI and automation becomes more embedded.
I think so. As manufacturing as a whole needs to adopt new technology to move forward, don't they? And that's always been the case, that humans have used technology to make things cheaper, faster, better quality.
Exactly. And I think we'll see more of that. And I think you see a lot of automated, specialized automated machinery in certain sectors. fine. They can do stuff much quicker, much more accurately, much more cost effectively than humans can. The advantage of cobots is you can bring that into different parts of the economy, further down in scale, and as you say, take one of those 3D jobs away from people and allow them to focus on other things. And we do have a labour shortage problem at the moment. I think that's not going to be fixed in the short term. So again, creating that capacity for robots to do jobs that you can't find the people to do,
Yes,
I think is equally important.
I think so, because there is an aging population in the
Yep.
manufacturing field, and we need to sort of like start to implement technology now that's going to help us value the people that we've got and let them use their human skills. Because we always say that human skill is the biggest asset that any manufacturing business has.
Yes.
And when you lose that, you've lost it basically. You can't get it back.
Yeah, people are always your most important resource,
Yeah.
definitely, and that's not going to change.
Yeah.
They'll be doing different things, but you're still going to need them in the system and to manage and program and optimize the use of these type of systems. You'll need people, and they're going to go wrong. You'll need people to fix them.
Yes.
You'll need people to install them. You'll need people to maintain them. You're going to need different types of jobs, but you'll still need plenty of jobs.
You're creating an extra economy on top of it, aren't you?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's that whole ecosystem around it, which again we're a bit behind some others, but I think there is a big opportunity space for us there as well. Because as you say, as these things get more rolled out, you're going to need those services. You're going to need those companies that support the rollout and the provision. You guys provide this stuff. You provide a lot of training for it. There's lots of other companies that work with you to deliver that capability to the end customer.
Yes. Excellent. Miles, thank you so much for joining us today to talk about robotics. It's been so interesting. That's all we've got from the Cobot channel this week. We'll speak to you next week with another interesting guest from the world of robotics.